Hello, everybody. This is Ryan from my Try Running Programs, and today's video is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to focus on the California International Marathon in the 2022 version, to be exact. This is a marathon that I've been training for. Really, if you've watched any of my previous videos, almost all of the videos that I've done so far on my channel have really been focused on the training in the lead up to this event. So this is my third time running the California International Marathon, and my goal is to give you maybe some insights for those of you who are newer to this event. I'm aiming for a time probably around the 3:05 mark on Sunday, maybe a little bit faster if everything kind of comes together. I'm feeling very good. I think my training program, the Hal Higdon Advanced One Marathon program, has really set me up well for today. My body feels good. My weight's at a good number. But really what I want to achieve with this video is not just to pat myself on the back, but to probably give you guys some insights that I think can help you benefit for race day. So I have 5 different categories that I'll be talking about today, and I'll break this video up into 5 parts with different transitions so that you can use timestamps to go to and from any particular part that might be a benefit to you. So hopefully you find something of value here, and I wish you all the best for those of you running the CIM this year. So the first item I'd like to discuss is really how my training went for this marathon. And I personally use the Hal Higdon Marathon Training Program, the Advanced One level to be exact. And really, you'll find that this program is pretty simple. So if you scroll down to Hal's chart here, he gives you a pretty simple breakdown of how the week works. And the information above this chart is fantastic. If you need breakdowns in terms of how some of these workouts kind of work out, then that's great information to read. But in terms of just the basics behind this program, there are 3 easy runs to lead out the start of the week, then usually a workout on your 4th day. Then on the 5th day of the week, there's rest, and then you have a couple more days. So roughly 6 days of running, usually somewhere between 4 to 5 easy days of running. That would be including a long run, since I think most long run efforts are generally easier. And then somewhere between 1 to 2 workouts per week. So a very simple program. Though I think for a lot of us, we probably spent most of this year base building because we didn't have any races to really work into our programs. So this ended up working out really well for me because I didn't have a lot of fast miles under feet. And if you watch some of my videos going through detailing my experience with this program, the number one item I always discuss was I haven't really ever done speed training this consistently before. So I'm finding that my experience with the program was fantastic because I wasn't used to that type of load on my body. Really, I didn't have any overuse issues really until probably about, I'd say roughly the middle of October. And it was right after this week that ended up being about a 63-mile week in the middle of October. And that was really a mistake where I kind of failed my long run on a Saturday, and then I just wanted to redo the long run on Sunday. And that was probably not my smartest call. So I did have some overuse injuries that I was dealing with. First, a little bit of plantar fasciitis in my feet, an Achilles strain, and then a little bit of runner's knee, all of which have been primarily worked out. I still have a little bit of runner's knee in my right knee, but nothing that would even remotely concern me for a race. It'll work itself out within a mile or two. So I'm not concerned on that front at all. Overall, though, I think the training has gone swimmingly. And so if you look at my Strava profile, I won't click through all the weeks, but essentially looking at it in more detail now, I've trained probably around 40 miles per week, which might seem on the low end. But that training overall led to about a 1:28 half marathon in training. Hal has you actually time trial a half marathon about the halfway point of his training program. And I felt like that was a really easy half marathon to run at that pace. So I feel pretty good about race day being somewhere around the 3:05 mark. That's what I'm aiming for. That might seem a little, maybe a little aggressive based on my past marathon times. Which have both been above 4 hours. But to be fair, for both of those, one, I wasn't really in great shape for, and the second one, I ran very low mileage total for the year. So this total for the year in terms of my mileage is roughly about 1,200 miles, which also might seem low, but that's just what I have mentally recorded, because on Strava, I have about 1,100 miles recorded, but I was using a watch during the first few months that wasn't recording mileage very well. So it could be more in the 1,300 to 1,400 mile range. Not super high, but high enough that I think it's had a huge, really big positive training stimulus. So overall, I think the training has gone swimmingly. I'm really excited for it. I feel great. Just did a 9-mile run yesterday, doing a lot of hill work just to kind of get that final feel for the course. But I feel good. I feel really, really good. And that. So the second major item I wanted to discuss was really two things, and that was first my overall weight management, because it is something that has come up in my training videos quite a bit, and secondly would be some of the pre-run items that I've been doing that I think are going to help me be more successful on race day comparative to my previous two runnings of CIM. So the first would be my overall weight. This was something that came up in my videos a lot, that I was trying to get myself down to about 180 pounds. And while this is a general thing that's not necessarily CIM specific, I do think it's really important on my end that I know that I'm going to run this marathon better at a lower weight. I've been in this 183 to 185 area for most of November/October. And this is when I ran that PR in the half marathon at 128 at. So I think this is a pretty good weight for me. I would have liked to have lost a couple more pounds, but you can see I have this week kind of open on my Strava. November 15th through the 21st, I was on a cruise ship. And anybody who's been cruising knows that can be a bit of a challenge to A, continue working out, but B, maintain your weight. I certainly didn't maintain my weight during that time frame. I probably put on a couple of pounds, but I was able to lose them over the last couple of weeks to get back down to 183. So that's been a great item, is keeping my weight down. And the other thing that I want to discuss was some of the adjunctive training that I've been doing. I've been weightlifting year round this year. And normally I'm somebody who will get really into weightlifting for a few months at a time, then maybe injure myself or just get bored of it. But that has not been the case this year. I've been doing a really a full body routine every other day, minus maybe the occasional when I tweak something, but pretty consistently 3 to 4 times a week since late December of last year. So that has been huge for me. What I have found is that especially my upper body routine has helped me really keep from getting side stitches, which has been probably my number one kind of killer when it comes to races. My bad races have been when I've gotten very, very bad side stitches. And I really don't even know what it's like to get a side stitch anymore. I just don't get them. Now, that could also just be because I'm better trained. That certainly could be true. But I think that has been huge. And the other thing is I've been experimenting a lot with supplementation this year. And what I've been focusing on, given that I'm a 31-year-old male, is testosterone boosting supplements. So things like Tongkat Ali, for those of you who may have heard of that. I've been taking just a general testosterone boost supplement. I know these are kind of hit or miss in terms of their science, but if you look at some of the ingredients on the back of it, it includes things like Tongkat Ali that are generally proven to increase your testosterone. Also been using ashwagandha as well to try to improve that. So I think that, along with B vitamins, have been really huge for me, feeling a lot better, feeling a lot more motivated. And then also using creatine to help with overall recovery has been very, very helpful, not just with lifting, but I found it to be very beneficial for recovery from long workouts. So I think those have helped a ton. Once again, not necessarily CIM specific, but I think for lead up, if you were going to run CIM next year, that would be my thing, is really, if you're somebody who's not lifting, look into that. If you can maybe stand to lose a couple of pounds, certainly try to. And then if you're a male, think about, maybe getting a testosterone test and seeing where you're at, and then look at natural alternatives to try to help boost those levels up if at all possible. So the third item to me is really knowing the course. And CIM is an interesting one in that I think it has a reputation as being this very downhill course. And if you look at the data on their course map, it does show that it's a 366-foot downhill, or net downhill, I should say. And while that is true, I would say it's a course that doesn't necessarily feel that way. So what I would first recommend is actually going to runsra.org and pulling up the course preview video that they have. It's really interesting to watch, because I think you'll see what a lot of runners would maybe agree with me with. I'd hope they'd agree with me on this one, that it's a very deceptive net downhill, because there is a lot of uphill that you kind of gain. It's very rolling for the first 15 miles. So at the start near Folsom Lake, through most of Citrus Heights, and really through even a good chunk of Fair Oaks, I have found that this is a course that does not feel downhill during that stretch. The start is definitely downhill. For about the first mile, you're running roughly downhill. But as you get really to the turn near 13 miles, you'll find you have spent a lot of time going up and down, up and down, up and down. And 15 through 20, even though it seems like it's going downhill on this chart, it feels just the opposite. Now, I don't know if that's just because in my previous two CIMs I was tired, probably not really adequately trained. That could certainly be true. But I have found that I've hit the wall much sooner than mile 20, where most people feel like they hit walls in a marathon. I have always felt like I've really hit it around mile 15 or so in this race. And so luckily this time, I have tried to run routes that are far more net elevation gain, or net vertical gain, I should say, in training, so that I can simulate more of that rolling kind of function that the course has. It just is what it is. Now, I will say that once you get through kind of those who've run the marathon, there's that blow up the wall kind of thing you run through. When you get through that, the course really does start to feel, and it very much so is, downhill flat from there. And so really, in my personal opinion, the way to run this course is, at least the way that I've trained it, is to bomb the downhills, run the downhills a little bit harder, take it a bit easier on the uphills, and then in the net that your time will be somewhat kind of safer. So I'm hoping really through the first, I'd say 13 miles or so, to probably run somewhere around 7:15 to 7:20 on most miles. I know there will be the occasional kind of jittery nerves mile that might push me below 7 minutes per mile. And I'm prepared for that. I understand that that will probably happen. Now, I'm not going to be a slave to my watch because I do know this course relatively well. This will be my third time running it. But I do think there is that component where you just have to know, even though the kind of the graphics and all of the material that you'll get from the folks at CIM staff will show a net downhill, and it will be a net downhill. It will not feel like it in most circumstances, I think, for most runners. Okay, maybe those of you who are super heavily trained or have run this a bunch of times, or just run more vertical gain in your training, that might not hit you as much. But I think for those of us who run in flatter areas, for example, for me, I run in the Salinas and Monterey County area, it's very, very flat for the most part here. I have to go find areas to gain vertical gain, really. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that this is a course that's going to be deceptive in nature. And if you really want to have that great finish from mile 20 to 26, that final 10K, then you're going to have to run cognizantly really through the first 20 miles, knowing that even though you are going downhill during that time frame, it's not always going to feel that way. And sometimes it's going to feel a lot harder than you would expect based on this net downhill chart that they give you. So just something to keep in the back of your mind as you're running the marathon. Now, another component that I think is really important to really any run that you're doing, but certainly for a marathon and a marathon for many like CIM, where it's a really important race on your schedule, is the gear that you're using. And so for me specifically, for running shorts and shirt, nothing super specific. It's just going to be basic stuff there. But in terms of my shoes, I think this is where it really does matter. This year, I have tried to train in shoes that are not necessarily always super max cushioning type shoes. And this is once again because I think with CIM, you're not necessarily, it's not a lot of hard pounding in my opinion. I mean, 26 miles, there's hard pounding for sure when it comes to the feeling on your legs and your knees and all of that, by all means. But I think this is one where you can get away with shoes that are maybe a little bit more built for speedier type workouts. So this would be the best way for me to put that. So this year, to do that, I have been training primarily in a pair of ASIC Solar Glides, which I don't have in front of me. But then also in the past 4 to 5 months, I've really been training in the New Balance Brezas. And so you can see there's shoes that are not super cush. These are, it's kind of a foamier type shoe. It's not as cushy as maybe like a New Balance Beacon. And you can see though that what I do like about them is they're very lightweight because they have almost no rubber on the bottom. So these are shoes that I put about 350 miles on, and I've broken in an identical pair just in white a little bit, put about 15-ish, maybe 20-ish miles on these so far in preparation for race day on Sunday. So I have found these to be fantastic shoes. I think they fit this marathon very, very well. just given that they are a mix of a little bit of cush, but far more built for speedier efforts. So I feel like that's going to help keep my overall kind of, once again, keeping the weight down as much as possible. Finding any little bit of kind of resistance and drag you can avoid is always good in my opinion. And then the next item that I think is really important in gear is going to be a new watch that my wife, God bless her, just bought me, the Garmin Instinct. And it's kind of a simpler running watch, but it does a great job of being able to set up different lap or splits that you want to do. Personally, I'm going to keep it to mile splits. I have a friend who will be running who will be keeping it to kilometer splits. I prefer the mile splits personally, but this notifies you every mile split with a quick, just kind of vibration and a ping sound. And that way, you know when you've hit that mile. And so it's really easy to kind of see what you're doing. The other small thing about this watch that I really like, great at keeping battery power with keeping its screen on all the time. It never turns its screen off. And that way you don't have to kind of fiddle with it. I was running with a Fitbit before this. I constantly had to be fiddling with the watch to get its screen to go on because I was having issues with the buttons. It was a nightmare. So having this, I don't have to worry about gear. I have a watch I can trust. I have shoes I can trust. I will also admittedly be running with a hand bottle. I like to avoid the early aid stations. I have found that the early aid stations and the early porta potties are crowded at that course. So really the first 15 miles, I want none of those. I will be using a hand bottle and just relying on it as far as I can. And then when I run out of water, that's when I would start to look for aid stations for things like Gatorade, water, maybe even like a Cliff shot or a little goo gel or something like that. But I do try to avoid the early aid stations because they are rowdy to begin with. So that's something gear related. If you're somebody who's going to rely on a lot of calorie intake during the race, I would say try to pack some of your own goos or your own little Cliff shots so that you're not trying to fight other people for this stuff at these aid stations. It's just too hard. They're too crowded. And another thing I would really say is when thinking about your shoe, this is a course that I don't think really requires a very cush shoe. There is a fair amount of up and down, but not enough that I think that you would really be disserviced unless you have some type of kind of biomechanical need for that type of shoe. So just something to keep in mind as you're planning your gear for race day. So my last item really of kind of thought when it comes to pre-planning CIM is, this is once again, as I've said a few times before, a course I've ran twice before. And I really love this course. The community support, the expo itself, just the whole vibe around the marathon is fantastic. It's really one of my favorite races that I've ever run. The downside to it is I've run it twice and have kind of come away disappointed both times. And really that's because both times I've really bonked instead of at mile 20, where most people feel like they bonk, it's really been mile 16. And so if you look even at my first attempt at CIM, I was running it pretty comfortably in about the 8-minute per mile pace, mid 8 minutes, I should say, until about mile 12, 13-ish, where it started to slow down. And then it just fell completely apart around mile 16, which is a little bit more like across the river from Rancho Cordova. So once again, you're kind of still in that Manzanita Avenue, Fair Oaks Boulevard stretch of the race. And you can see these are still areas that are considerably net downhill when we really think about it. Not a ton, but enough that it shouldn't be really killing you. And you can see that these were really, where the effort started to decline, had to walk a lot, struggle a lot with it. So I know mentally this is an area where, for me specifically, I'm going to probably have the most concern because mentally I'll have known I've run these races before, okay, up into about here. Now, once again, for me, having these past experiences, the number one thing it taught me was to train well for this marathon. Obviously, none of us can go back and redo our training. Whatever we've done so far is what we have. But for me, I'm so much better trained compared to those past two efforts that I'm not afraid of bonking here. What I'm afraid of is bonking at mile 20, because now I'm afraid that I'll be running that too hard too soon. Because I'll feel good. I'll feel so much better. I think I'll have so much adrenaline from, hitting splits much faster than I would have in past efforts, that I have to be very, very cognizant of what I'm doing. And so once again, this just goes back to even what I've said before, is I know what the course is like. I know what my past experience has been like. I feel like I have the right gear for race day. So now it's just letting training do its job. And so if I was to wrap up this video in any way, is that for those of you who are running this for the first time, or you're running it for your 10th or 20th time, it doesn't really matter. We all have trained what we have trained. We've done what we can do. This is race day now. It's time to have fun and not really actually look at this as some job. I'm not going to get paid for this. I'm out here to have a good time. And so for me, I'm looking at this far much less. How do I say this? I'm not so hard on myself this year. I'm actually really looking forward to this race. I'm looking forward to having fun on this race and really setting a big PR. I could see myself reasonably PRing by about an hour in the marathon, which would be awesome. So for me, it's just knowing the course now. If you don't know the course, watch the videos to learn the course a bit from Run SRA, and really watch some of the other great content about CIM on YouTube. But ultimately, I hope my video can serve to give you some function. Once again, if you go in on race day, knowing that you've done your training, you've got some gear you feel comfortable with, there's nothing really special about CIM that you need to know. It's just knowing that you've done enough and that you feel comfortable with your selections on race day. The course is going to have no major surprises, in my opinion. You know that it's net downhill. You know that there's a little bit of rolling in the first 16 miles or so, and then it will start to feel more and more downhill as you start to finish. As long as you kind of keep that in mind and you avoid those aid stations for the first 15 miles. I'm only kidding. You can use them, but I find that they're really crowded. So I do try to avoid them. But so long as you're doing what you need to do on race day, I think you're going to have a great time. This is my favorite race when it comes to the marathon distance. And I really can't wait to run 2022 again. So best of luck to all of you and take care.